Wings of Uncertainty. Cha Eun-woo's fight to fly introduction. When people think of Cha Eun-woo, they often imagine the actor idol with perfect looks, the face genius whose presence commands both screens and stages. But beneath the glamour lies a story of grit, ridicule, and an unlikely dream that almost never took flight. Before debuting as an artist, before stepping onto a drama set, Eun-woo once stood in a training hall filled with doubt. He wasn't practicing choreography or lines that day. He was training to be a flight attendant. And in that room, his wings of uncertainty were tested by the harsh words of peers who didn't believe a boy from Leshan could ever soar. This is a story of that journey. One young man struggled against stereotypes, the weight of expectation, and the quiet persistence that turned ridicule into resilience. Cha Eun-woo's childhood in Leshan was far from the fast-paced glitz of Seoul. Leshan, a city nestled along the confluence of rivers and mountains, is famous for its giant Buddha, a monument of patience and stone endurance. For Eun-woo, that statue often symbolized the life he wanted. Still, strong, yet overlooking vast horizons. But life in Leshan wasn't always forgiving. Opportunities were scarce, and ambition often clashed with tradition. For a young boy harboring dreams of travel and discovery, the idea of becoming a flight attendant seemed like a path toward escape, a way to connect with the world beyond his quiet hometown. To his family, the dream sounded unusual. For his peers, it was laughable. And for Eun-woo himself, it was a constant tug between confidence and doubt. The first day of flight attendant training was nothing like he expected. Rows of recruits sat with perfect posture, crisp uniforms, and voices polished with urban sophistication. Eun-woo, with his soft Leshan accent and quiet manner, felt like a misplaced note in a symphony. The instructors introduced the program: etiquette drills, safety protocols, crisis simulations, and the art of service. Every recruit was expected not just to perform, but to embody confidence. And that was when the whispers began. He's from Leshan? Really? A boy from the countryside? How can he represent an airline? He looks too timid. He won't last. Each word chipped at him like pebbles against glass. His accent, his background, even his appearance. Everything was picked apart. Some classmates snickered when he introduced himself. Others openly questioned why a man, let alone one from a small city, would pursue this career. Still, Eun-woo endured. Flight attendant training is notoriously grueling. Recruits endure mock emergencies, endless etiquette lessons, and the psychological pressure of perfection. For Eun-woo, it was a battlefield of perception. During a group drill where trainees practiced emergency announcements, Eun-woo's accent made some stumble into laughter. When he offered to serve during role-play exercises, a classmate muttered, "This isn't a stage for farmers." He would return to his dorm late at night, staring at his reflection. The boy in the mirror looked fragile, as though a single gust of scorn might break him. And yet, beneath the exhaustion, his eyes carried a question. What if they're wrong? One day, during a training exercise designed to boost confidence, the recruits were asked to deliver a short self-introduction in front of the group, like standing on stage. Most performed smoothly, with polished smiles. When it was Eun-woo's turn, a hush fell over the hall. He stepped forward, hands trembling, heart pounding with the weight of ridicule. He introduced himself, voice uneven at first, then steadier with each word. He spoke about Leshan, about his family, and about his dream of seeing the world, not as a passenger, but as someone who connects people across borders. To his surprise, the room fell silent. For a moment, his sincerity pierced through the fog of mockery. A few clapped politely. Some rolled their eyes. But one instructor nodded, as though seeing in him what others had missed: resilience. Ridicule didn't vanish, but neither did Eun-woo's determination. Each insult became fuel. Each stumble became practice. He spent hours perfecting his speech to soften his accent. He observed how confident peers carried themselves and mimicked their posture until it felt natural. He pushed himself to master the technical protocols, earning quiet acknowledgement from instructors who saw his growth. In his lowest moments, he thought of the giant Buddha back home, centuries old, unyielding, yet still watching over the rivers. If stone could endure, why couldn't he? It was during a public speaking assessment that fate intervened. An airline representative attending the training remarked, half-jokingly, "This boy should be on a stage, not just in the aisle of the plane." The comment was meant lightly, but it struck a chord. What if his wings weren't meant for the cabin aisle, but for something bigger? The training had stripped him down and tested him, but it had also given him a new kind of stage presence. For the first time, Un-woo considered that perhaps ridicule had led him here for a reason. Un-woo never abandoned his flight attendant training completely, but became a stepping stone rather than a destination. When he later entered the entertainment industry, the echoes of ridicule followed him. Critics doubting his talent, peers dismissing him as just a pretty face, fans questioning his depth. But by then, he had been forged in the fire of mockery. He had stood in front of a room of disbelievers and found his voice. That memory became his shield. Every drama role, every live performance, every moment under the spotlight. He carried the same lesson. Ridicule is temporary. Resilience is eternal. Looking back, Un-woo often describes those early years as his wings of uncertainty. He didn't know where they would carry him. He didn't know if ridicule would crush or sharpen him. But he learned something profound. Uncertainty is not weakness. It's the beginning of flight. For fans, his story resonates because it dismantles the illusion of perfection. The star they see today was once a trembling boy in a training hall, mocked for daring to dream. And yet, like the rivers of Lesan carving through mountains, persistence reshaped his path. Conclusion, Wings of Uncertainty, is more than Cha Un-woo's personal chapter. It is a metaphor for anyone standing at the edge of ridicule and doubt. It is a reminder that voices of disbelief may be loud, but they do not define destiny. A boy from Lesan once stood in a room where no one believed he could belong. Today, he stands on global stages where millions cheer his name. The journey from ridicule to resilience, from training hall to spotlight, shows us that sometimes the wings we doubt the most are the ones that carry us the farthest. Because flight does not begin with certainty. It begins with courage. The early morning fog in Lesan often clung to the rooftops like a heavy curtain, veiling the small city in muted shades of gray. As a child, Cha Un-woo would stand on the balcony of his modest home, staring at the distant outline of the giant Buddha. His grandmother often told him, "That statue doesn't speak, but it listens. It watches the world, unshaken." For Un-woo, those words became a quiet mantra. He wasn't the loudest child in the neighborhood. He didn't win every game of football on the dusty fields. But he dreamed bigger than anyone around him. Airplanes flying overhead fascinated him. He would run out into the yard, neck craned, eyes sparkling as if the trails of white smoke were invitations written in the sky. When he told his classmates that he wanted to become a flight attendant, the reaction was a mix of confusion and laughter. Boys don't do that. From Lesan, you think they'll hire you? You should pick something realistic. But he didn't stop dreaming. The boy from Lesan carried his ambition like a fragile paper plane, easily torn, but determined to fly. Years later, he found himself standing in a gleaming training hall, the walls lined with mirrors and the floor polished to a reflective shine. Rows of recruits sat with perfect posture, their navy uniforms crisp, hair neatly pulled back, shoes gleaming as though they had been buffed that very morning. Un-woo, dressed in the same uniform, felt out of place. His Lesan accent lingered in his voice. His tie sat slightly askew despite his best efforts, and his shoes bore the faint scuffs of hurried polishing. Welcome. In the next 12 weeks, you will be tested not just in skill, but in confidence. A flight attendant represents dignity, composure, and service. Remember, you are the face of the sky. As the recruits nodded in unison, Un-woo felt a sting of insecurity. Around him, whispers started. Which city did he say he's from? Lesan? Never heard of anyone from there making it this far. Look at him. He doesn't even walk like the rest of us. He clenched his fist discreetly, nails digging into his palm, but his face stayed composed. The boy from Lesan had endured ridicule before. This was just another test. The first drill. On the second day, the class practiced in-flight announcements. Each recruit stood before the microphone, reading the script with polished tones. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 302. Please fasten your seatbelts as we prepare for departure. Their voices rolled smoothly, like professional radio hosts. When Un-woo's turn came, his throat tightened. He gripped the microphone, palms sweating. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight 302. A chuckle came from the back. Someone whispered, "He sounds like he's giving a weather report in the countryside." Laughter rippled. His ears burned red, but he forced himself to finish the script. Every word was a climb uphill, heavy and awkward. By the time he stepped down, his heart sank. Yet later that night, he replayed the moment in his head. Instead of giving up, he began practicing in front of his dorm mirror. Over and over, he spoke into an imaginary microphone, shaping his accent into smoother tones, teaching his voice to rise and fall like the professionals. One afternoon, the recruits were drilled in service etiquette. They practiced walking the aisle with trays of water glasses. Balance, posture, and composure were key. As Un-woo took his turn, his hand trembled slightly. A glass rattled. "Careful, Les Han boy," someone snickered. "Don't spill on us." He pressed his lips together, steadying his steps. But halfway down the aisle, one glass tipped, spilling water onto the floor. The room erupted in laughter. A sharp voice followed. "See? I told you he doesn't belong here." Un-woo bent to clean the spill, every movement echoing humiliation. Yet inside, a quiet defiance sparked. He thought of the giant Buddha, unmoving, unshaken. Endure, endure. That evening, when others rested, he filled a tray with cups in the cafeteria and practiced walking the length of his dorm hall, again and again, until the cups barely trembled. By the end of the second week, the recruits were asked to perform short introductions before the group, a confidence-building exercise. One by one, his peers dazzled with charm. Smooth smiles, witty anecdotes, polished tones. Applause followed each performance. Then came Un-woo's turn. He walked to the front, his shoes echoing on the polished floor. Whispers rose. "Let's see what he messes up this time." Betty stutters again. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice began steady. "My name is Cha Un-woo. I come from Leshan, a city by the rivers, watched over by the giant Buddha." The room quieted. He spoke of growing up beneath that colossal statue, of dreaming about the airplanes that cross the sky, of wanting to connect people the way bridges connect rivers. "I may not be the most polished here," he admitted, voice stronger now, "but I believe that a flight attendant's job isn't just to serve. It's to remind passengers they are safe, valued, and seen. That is the person I want to become." For a moment, silence filled the hall. Even those who had mocked him earlier lowered their eyes. A few clapped politely. Others remained stiff. But one instructor gave a small, approving nod. That night, lying awake, Un-woo felt something shift. Ridicule still surrounded him, but for the first time, he had stood his ground. His words had reached the room, even if only for a fleeting moment. The ridicule didn't stop in the weeks that followed. But neither did Un-woo's determination. He practiced harder, trained longer, and carried himself with a quiet pride born not of arrogance, but of survival. Each whisper against him was another stone beneath his feet, lifting him higher. Each laugh was another gust of wind testing his wings. And though the boy from Leshan still doubted himself at times, he knew this much. Uncertainty might weigh him down, but it would not break him.